Big week for content, honestly. I thought I was going to make this video tomorrow, but I feel like today is maybe the correct day to make it now and just release it later on in the day. So if you've seen, there's been a lot of discussion in the WoW community talking about the raid unlock schedule. Basically, with a lot of the news that we saw this most recent week, one of the things that Blizzard also announced is that for the next season and for season 2, there's going to be simultaneous raid releasing. In addition to that, there's going to be uncapped M+, again, uncapped rewards from M+, rather. And so everything is going to be releasing all on the exact same date in Season 2. And we can take a look here at this Wowhead post. And it basically says that, according to Blizzard's Dragonflight schedule, we should expect 10.1 to launch between spring and summer of 2023. And basically, it's going to have the same cadence from Vault of the Incarnates, where normal, heroic, and mythic will release simultaneously. And this has been quite interesting, quite the doozy in regards to opinions that we've seen from both sides, whether it be, average to enthusiast level players versus hardcore to like race to world first raiders. And I think that this has actually been very interesting, and so we can kind of talk about both sides. So just to kind of explain what the two options are, first and foremost, option number one is what we had this most recent season in Vault of the Incarnates, where normal, heroic, and mythic released simultaneously. That also came with uncapped M+, where players are able to just do dungeons at the highest level, get the best gear immediately, but at the same point, all of the difficulties of the raid are unlocked at the exact same time. That makes sense, that there's no staggered release. The alternative, which is what we had for a very long time, basically since the inception of M+, is we've had this staggered M+ release schedule, where M+'s were capped at plus level 6, so a little bit lower than heroic. In addition to that, and so basically you wouldn't get rewards past level 6 at all for the first week. Heroic was the only difficulty, heroic and normal were the only difficulties available in the first week. And mythic came out and M+ got unlocked 1 week later. And those are basically the two options that we've seen in the past. And that leads to where, if you look at this from like a casual POV, and let's kind of talk about this from like the casual angle and kind of talk about both sides of what we've seen so far. For the casual angle, it's more fun for them to be, for them to have this release cadence, right? The current one that we are on, where it's simultaneous release, M+ is completely unlocked because they're not locked in this artificial cap where they have to weirdly min-max farming 6s. It's not necessarily fun for casuals / those who don't raid or those who just generally interact with M+. In addition to that, from like a casual POV, this really only affects guilds that wouldn't be progressing heroic, right? Like if you slam all the way through heroic the first week and then you have to start progging mythic or whatever, you don't really necessarily have a lot of time to prog mythic, or you're like farming gear. It only affects those guilds, right? Where it doesn't affect most guilds that are progressing heroic or are not fully completed with heroic in the first week anyways. In addition to that, there are advantages of M+ coming out all at once as opposed to a stagger release, because you're able to, again, like I said, not have this weird bin maxi thing. And we've seen a couple of takes on this. I actually found this Reddit post from 3 months ago that on the competitive WoW Reddit. I normally stay away from the competitive WoW Reddit, but I thought that I actually had a pretty insightful post as this discussion topic, where I think that for a large portion, I don't want to say for all players, but for a large portion of players, they say it's so much better as a player mainly because of the uncapped M+. So even though I loved watching the race, and that was undoubtedly worse, I would like to keep it. I think that that's pretty reasonable. Grau had an interesting take on his stream as well, and we can watch this and listen to kind of what he has to say about it.
But I'll tell you this, right? I understand that there are some people that are participating in the race to world first. I also understand there's some people that don't really interact with the raid at all other than watching the race to world first. I don't give a fuck about the race to world first. I want the content release schedule to be set up for the average player or the enthusiast player who wants to play the game. I don't really give a shit if the bosses are balanced on the first week. If you want to be a bunch of fucking freaks and you want to make 17 demon hunters and then run 10 splits every day and then go into the raid and then be angry that the boss is 2 times as hard as it should be, look, that's on you, dog.
Okay, so I think that from like a casual to enthusiast level player like Grau identifies, this is a position where it's like, okay, I would much rather have M+ be uncapped at the very first week, even if that is to the detriment of raiders, or to the detriment of high-end level raiders. Let me be very clear here. To the detriment of high-end level raiders, because again, like I stated earlier, this simultaneous release thing doesn't even affect most raiders. It only affects very few. So from the hardcore angle, we've actually seen a lot of posts or a lot of tweets in regards to like what they think. And so kind of talking about it from the hardcore player, acquiring tier and gearing characters is a little bit more annoying. It promotes splits also a bit more because you have to like hyper gear these characters. And every single piece of gear, especially early on, is more important because like there's diminishing returns later on to the raid. At like week 10 of the raid, you're not going to need the gear, but at week 1, the gear is a lot more valuable. In addition to that, it promotes slightly more M+ for grinding gear. What I wrote down for my notes here is it doesn't even promote it a lot more, just slightly more. And again, there's kind of like these diminishing returns where early on it's pretty good to grind M+, but even in the other system, it's still good to grind M+ early on. So that's not necessarily like that much of a difference. It's only slightly more, not like a large portion. And so we've had some takes from high-end raiders where basically Zyro says, how do you miss the mark so hard on the heroic/mythic release, not releasing it once thing? The whole community is begging for that not to happen again, and you just do it. Additionally, we have Lorgok who says, the raid will launch normal, heroic, and mythic. Excuse me, I don't know a single person who has something positive to say about this. And they're you know, and then we have Max here who's stating that simultaneous release or not, there's no good reason to cap M+ week 1. This is a relic of the past that never got addressed. It doesn't really affect the way that you approach heroic week with it being this way. I don't know is positively affected by doing a simultaneous release. I can tell you that no heroic week was largely questions the integrity of class/raid balance/tuning if it's anything like Vault. So something that they all keep saying too is that the raid is going to inherently be worse balanced because of this. That's something that they continue to claim. Whether that is true or not, you know, you don't really know. But it definitely gives them more data whenever Blizzard has a heroic week. So let's generally talk about my thoughts on this just a little bit. Now, I think that maybe something Max said at the very beginning is could be the case, right? Where I don't think that players, and I definitely don't think that the large portion of the player base should fall into this band where they are having to like do this strange niche min-max thing where they're farming 6s the first week while raiders are just doing heroic weeks and doing that kind of thing. That seems super weird to me. I do think that there is maybe a little bit of a middle ground in regards to like Blizzard could uncap M+ during heroic week. But even with that being the case, you'll probably still see raiders complaining that they have to spam keys, or they'll even maybe make the claim that they have to spam keys even more than this current system. And I think that one of the big things is like with that solution is that it Omega de-incentivizes raid and just like heroic raid in general, because if everything is completely uncapped, then you're going to be able to have players that waltz into heroic as like at the 410 item level equivalent whenever, you know, raid is only giving 402 item level gear, or they're walking into raid, I guess, at 405. Whenever a heroic raid only necessarily gives 402 item level gear. Now, is that always going to be the case for a lot of players? No, but it definitely de-incentivizes heroic raid more. And I don't know, that kind of feels a little bit wrong to me. I do think that one thing that players do have to take into account, though, is that the gearing system should be less polarizing this time around due to, first off, just generally players are going to have higher item level going from M0s into heroic or normal raid. That's a massive item level increase. We were 372 entering the raid, and again, 402s were dropping from heroic, and so that was, you know, a 30 item level increase. Whereas next tier, heroic is going to probably drop somewhere in the order of 430-ish. So 6 item level increase if you were already previously rating mythic as opposed to 30. Kind of a big difference. And on top of that, you're going to have tier bonuses already. So that's also something you have to factor in. And so my thoughts are generally like, if the options from Blizzard's angle are you have a heroic week and then you have capped M+ versus uncapped M+ and all raids end up releasing together, they absolutely should release all raids together with M+ being uncapped. And I think that goes kind of back to what Growl was saying earlier, is like, this is maybe just the quintessential 1% issue where it's like most people as players, mainly because of instant uncapped M+, had a better time. Whereas for the hardcore player, basically players who get cutting edge, this affects pretty much all players who get cutting edge, by the way, are going to have a slightly worse experience as a whole. But I think that for a large portion of the player base, this is going to be better for them, especially if those are the two options. I think that Flex actually had a pretty good take, and I've seen a couple of the Echo guys have this shared opinion where it's like the raid release schedule might be the first time I can agree that the top end is being a very loud and small echo chamber. And I think that that's something you really have to worry about, is like, whenever I was looking into this, obviously I'm somebody who's affected negatively by simultaneous release. I travel to Race to World First events. I cast the Race to World First. I raid in a top 40 world guild, right? I have to do these things with splits and whatnot that I am impacted by the simultaneous release negatively. But I do see the players that it positively impacts, and it's better for them. I think that WoW in general has things that negatively impact some groups of players. For the players that don't raid at all, they only have the creation catalyst to be able to get tier, and that's like a big point of friction for a decent amount of players, right? They get annoyed that they're not able to get tier as fast. But at the same point, like, this is just another point of friction on the other end, where raiders more often than not are the ones that have the best gear, especially with like very rare items. They have to deal with lower amounts of like pitfalls in regards to, they have the tier from their content, and on top of that, Blizzard generally tries to cater things towards them. If things are minorly inconveniencing raid, they are willing to sacrifice both Mythic Plus and PvP to those who are minorly inconveniencing raid. And so Blizzard coming out and stating that we're going to continue on with the simultaneous release because we have seen it as a positive thing for more players, I think it just makes sense to continue to do it like this. Then if it is genuinely impacting more players positively than it is negatively, I think that this is the better solution. And again, this only impacts players who are getting cutting edge all the way up to like Race to World First level players, and it does negatively impact those players. But it's not like Max said that this positively impacts nobody, and we can just uncap M plus week one. Like, it doesn't have to be this thing where we can have a staggered release where Heroic comes out and M plus is also completely uncapped the same week. That is possible. And I think that would be actually a pretty decent middle ground. But if the options from Blizzard's position are like Heroic week and Captain Plus versus uncapped M plus and all raids releasing simultaneously, I think we have to have the simultaneous raid release. And that's an unfortunate reality of the situation. Really interested in your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm being a fool? What do you guys think? I'll see you guys in the next video.